Hey YouTube, it's Chris Bergstrom from BushidoPhoto.com, and today I want to talk to you about black and white photography. So, I love black and white photography. I've been shooting black and white back in the film days on a Nikon FE2 starting back in 1988. I used to do some darkroom work and I loved it. However, all the chemicals and all the stuff you had to deal with film photography, I just left that to the pros and started taking my photos to a real photo developing place, not the little kiosks that you see at like Walmart or something like that, but go to a real film lab. There's a few of them. I think there's Taylor Photo in New Jersey, and that's the one that I was familiar with. There's some here in Tokyo, where I live right now in Japan, and some of my favorite films are made by Ilford. So I love the Pan F plus 50 because it's very low grain and I can shoot in the daytime with super shallow depth of field because the ASA being 50, which is the same as your ISO on your digital camera, really doesn't introduce a lot of grain. And then the Ilford XP2 Super 400, this is another great film. But what you need to do is to go out, if you're going to shoot black and white film, is to go out and buy like 10 different types of black and white film and shoot all of them, take them to a good developing place, and then when you get the prints back, look at them and dissect what you like about each one, because each type of black and white film has its own unique characteristics. So what if you're like me and you don't want to shoot just film, you want instant results, you don't want to wait for the time of developing and whatnot, so you're going to shoot with a digital camera most likely, unless you're shooting with your cell phone or something like that. So I recommend when you're shooting with your cell phone to shoot in RAW. And I personally use the FujiFilm X-T2, and FujiFilm is known for great black and white colors. So I'll shoot RAW plus JPEG using the Acros simulation, usually with the red filter, just because that's the personal look that I prefer and like. And when you're shooting in RAW though, it gives you the ability to bring back detail in the highlights and also in the shadows as needed, because it's a higher bitrate file, where JPEGs are generally, they're 8-bit files. So compared to a 14-bit or higher bitrate RAW file, there's a lot more detail and information that's being captured on the RAW file. So the software that I use to process my black and white shots, I use 2 to 3 different programs, and the first one I'll talk about is the Alien Skin Exposure program. It's, I think, Exposure 10 right now, and this has tons of film simulations built into it from the black and white film stock. So they scanned negatives and then took out the data from the actual photograph and apply that same look, so you actually get realistic looking film grain for digital cameras. And it also adjusts the curve, so the exposure curve, the contrast is going to look different with each different type of film stock that you use in Photoshop or Exposure 10. The other photo program that I use is called DxO Film Labs, and this one's got some really good presets, but if you go in there and you actually play with it, you can create your own presets to create your own special unique look. And these go back from the early 1900s all the way to the 40s, 50s, and up until modern film stocks, and you can get the grain and the look that you want. Last weekend, I went out with a fellow photographer, and we were shooting during a workshop, and this was a lighting workshop. And if you look at these photos I'm about to put up on the screen, you can see how just one light really adds some drama. Now, we were using the 40-ish inch Profoto Octabox, and this is a pretty good light modifier for a single light. And we were using the Godox, the AD600, to get a lot of power. It's 600 watt seconds. It's battery powered. It can shoot up to 500 full power flashes. Now, we were in a tunnel, we were out on location, out in the sun, and we were overpowering the sun. And on my camera, since I'm using the FujiFilm, I didn't feel like dealing with the high-speed sync issues, having to stack 2 triggers on my camera. So what I did was I used a variable neutral density filter on the front of the lens, shooting all of these with the FujiFilm 56mm f1.2, and you can see nice shallow depth of field. The bokeh in the background is really awesome, and you can't do this any other way unless you shoot with high-speed sync. So before I talk to you about high-speed sync with the Fujifilm system, let's talk about not using high-speed sync. So here you can see the color image of behind the scenes, and that's the Profoto Octabox, and Bob is one of my workshop students, is holding the modifier for me and aiming it. You can see the shadow on the background. And here is the final image that I processed using exposure 10, and I used one of the classic black and white film stocks and added this vignette in post. So I could have got a very similar look by using a grid spot, maybe a 20 to 30 degree grid. I just didn't have one on hand, so I decided to just kind of fake it in Photoshop, and I really like the way this photo turned out. Here's another example without the vignette. So you're getting this very punchy light out of the Octabox, and she's also being side lit, so we kind of move the light modifier at a 45 degree angle, and then we're allowing some of the ambient light. You can see on the bottom of her right leg on the back side, the reflection, that's actually the ambient light coming through the tunnel, and that's all controlled by your shutter speed. All right, so we changed locations. There's a loading dock down in there, so we had her climb up on this thing, and she was able to get up there even with her high heels on. And there's a bird net to kind of keep the birds out when the roller door is open. And she's just striking a pose, and we had the 13-foot light stand boomed way up high, and you can see the shadow under the chin and the soft shadow falling on the door. So this shot was one of my favorites from the day. So what you're actually seeing here is the playground rubber mats that kind of sit out on a playground, and these are probably 10 or 15 years old. They were actually green in color, and they were falling apart. They were all warped from the sun, and I used this angle so I could cut out everything that was in the background, which you'll see in the next shot here. So again, shooting at f1.2 with the 56mm. That's a kid's playground in the background, and the sun was directly behind our model, which is her name's Andrea Silva, currently in Tokyo, Japan. And so I allowed, I was able to get this look by using a neutral density filter, and it's a variable, so as you turn it, it gets darker. I just turned it until at f1.2 at 2/50th of a second, the background was the brightness that I wanted it, and that's the final shot. So later in the day, we came back to the studio, and we were doing some studio workshop tutorials, and I just have a plain mottled brown background, and this is a one light shot using a 60-inch Fotodiox Octabox with a grid spot, which is how you're getting that sort of vignette look, but this is actually all straight out of camera. Another little bit of news, if you're a Fujifilm shooter, which is probably why you follow this channel, is there's a new Godox flash coming out, and it's selling on Adorama right now as a pre-order, and it's only $79 or something like that. So what is so big about having this flash? Well, for me, I'm not going to use it as an actual flash. What I'm going to do is turn the output of the built-in flash off and use it as a trigger to be a master trigger for all of my Godox speed lights and all of the 8600s that I'll have in the studio or on location. And why is this so important for Fujifilm shooters? It's important because up until now, there's only been the Cactus V62 and maybe another company, Robo Triggers or something like that, and they're the only ones that have actually allowed native high-speed sync with the hot shoe with a Fujifilm connector on it. So now Godox, if you're using Godox speedlights, Godox strobes, flashes, whatever, you're going to have a Fujifilm dedicated hot shoe, which will allow you to get high-speed sync up to 1/8,000th of a second with no issues. And for Fujifilm shooters, this is going to be like the day when the skies open up and the angels start singing. So I'm really looking forward to that. So again, shoot black and white film or black and white digital photography. Make your photos look awesome, bring some drama, and just like I'm shooting this video right now, use grid spots, really focus the light on the subject. You can create that old Hollywood look, or you can just create something that's, you know, very interesting for the viewers. And also you can shoot with fine art photography. You can shoot landscapes, and just adjusting your contrast in post using your raw files will really make your photos pop. If you have any questions on how I process my images or specific settings that I use in the software, please let me know. Comment, like, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks. Have a good day.